Hello and welcome back. Hello, Ciaran. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, David. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. I am looking forward to part 2 of the Docker, Kubernetes, and Laravel edition. It's going to be a tough one today.
I feel like we have to be really high energy after your intro video.
I have considered so many times making a joke about the polarity between the higher energy intro and then my completely low energy personality. So
I think we share that. So yeah, we've got lots of different things we could do today, haven't we?
Oh, we do. So let's build a little bit of context here. So this session is we are trying to show how to take a Laravel application from your local machine, produce a container-based development environment using Docker and Docker Compose, and show you the real kind of day one deploy to Kubernetes scenario. What we tried to do in the last session was squeeze all of that in to two sessions now. This is actually, I guess this is part 3. We did non-Laravel, then we did Laravel, and now we're back to continue with Laravel. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem we did is we tried to do it all and all the Laravel stuff in a single session. And I think what we've realized is we really just need to kind of slow down and do this bit by bit. Like, there's a lot of different things that we need to get right to really produce a developer experience that's going to work for people and not be too cumbersome.
Yeah, although not to put people off, but we've not spent that many hours on it. It's that we've done it across 3 sessions. But if we were at work and not talking through things, if this was lunchtime and I'd spent 3 hours doing what we've done so far, I'd feel like it was a good day's work so far.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's true. And I think now that we're getting into the individual components of a Laravel application, we tried to kind of build a full pipeline on the last one, and now we can go back and clean up a few of those artifacts that maybe aren't as great as we wanted.
So do you want to recap what we've got to? We've got a dev environment. We're building the front-end assets. We're populating the database. We deployed it to your local Kubernetes, right?
We did deploy it to Kubernetes, yep. We left a few things to the imagination, though. So I think if let's pop up my code. Our code. This is pair programmed. So we put together a Docker Compose file. We have an nginx container that is delivering our front-end assets. We have a PHP container that is delivering the Laravel code. And we have MariaDB, which has a basic health check that allows us to really provide a local experience for working in containers that should be one command, using those health checks to handle the orchestration component. We have a Docker file with multiple layers. We did our best to put together a base layer with dev tooling that we would require and production tooling. So we've got a PDO MySQL extension. We then augment that with a few developer tools. Right now, we are bundling in nodejs and npm to do asset compilations. But one of the major themes for today, this is not something that we would expect, or this is not something we'd think is an ideal solution. What else do we have? We have then our FPM image, which we're using to actually ship to production. We have a test layer, which we're going to run our test against. And we have some asset compilation to produce an asset production image, which can be deployed separately, which we did show with this really primitive deployment YAML for Kubernetes, which deployed our FPM and nginx containers side by side. Mm-hmm. We added in, because it was late in the last session, this is how we would run our database migrations, but we didn't actually run that ourselves. That's something that we will need to tackle at some point. But we are going to use a concept called an init container. And if I remember correctly, on the last conversation, I said there were really 2 ways to handle this. The other way would be that you could spin off a job that ran alongside of your deployment to handle the migrations asynchronously, which is a flow you may wish to adopt if your migrations are additive. They work in a way that no new queries, no queries could potentially break with an older version of the schema.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
To do it as part of an init container, the migrations have to be safe to run more than once, right?
To do it as part of an init container, yes, so your migrations definitely have to be idempotent. They're going to run every single pod that deploys. But more importantly, I guess, is that they have to be able to handle some sort of locking mechanism, because there is the chance or likelihood that 2 pods will try to run it at roughly the same time during a deployment. Now, we did briefly talk about update strategies and how we can use that to limit that risk, but really you just want to be able to make sure that your migration says, hey, I'm going to lock this table right now, no one else gets access. It will put a bit of latency on other pods starting up, but it definitely is the safest way to handle a migration in this kind of situation.
In a lot of migration libraries, there's obviously different ways to do it. They'll have one table which shows what version of the migration you're on, and that's the only one you need to lock, right? So you wouldn't be contending necessarily with live transactions happening on the database for normal traffic.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. Like, I think every migration library I played with in the past has had a migrations table which gets locked on a migration run to protect it, which means your application will still handle traffic pretty well during that time. Phew. All right.
So in our Docker file, why were we installing npm? Was that just left over? Because it looks like we're using an npm image to build the assets. Oh, it was on dev, wasn't it, that we were installing npm?
Yeah, we do augment our development. So we configured a way that we could run this through a D shell environment so that we could have like an interactive terminal. I still think that's a really good way of doing it, but what we didn't cover was automatic recompilation of those assets and then the ability to deliver them through a different container. So it may be that we break up that environment, and well, we can talk about that in a minute. I think we will separate that, and the D shell will only be for the PHP commands, because those are the ones that I think are going to run interactively, and we'll try and move the npm stuff to be a more automated fashion.
Which is which is the difference that comes from the JavaScript stuff being a sort of built, compiled language, whereas PHP is interactive. So there's a big difference, isn't there? There's an explicit step of like, now it's ready to execute in JavaScript.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You know, those assets are being delivered. There's no, like, it's not like we have to go in and run Composer install. I mean, we do have an npm install, but we'll handle that separately. It's not like we need to do Composer cache clears. It's not like we have to do database migrations. I mean, the only interactive component here is Laravel. Our Laravel application is what we're developing. The assets are something that enrich that application with other things, and we can push that to the side and have that work in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I think we're going to focus on the asset stuff today. That's where most of the questions came via YouTube comments or Reddit or Twitter. What I will suggest is for anyone that is watching, if you want to ask questions, you can leave them on the YouTube chat live, and we will do our best to answer them. If you have questions that you wish to ask after this video, or you're not watching live, there's a link on the bottom of the screen. And if you're feeling brave and want to come and join on and ask a question, then we're going to try and encourage that too. So leave a message in Discord or YouTube, and we'll find a way to get it. It has a very loud plane overhead.
I think it's a helicopter. I'll just
I just mute Ciaran. We don't need to hear from him anyway. So sorry, mate. All right. So Ciaran has told me that my link is missing an HTTP. It's not. I thought it was cool. I thought that looked.
Oh, right. That's on purpose.
Yeah. I mean, we can, like, I wanted people to know it was a URL, so I put like // I didn't think putting HTTP or HTTPS was really. You're making me doubt all my things there. Anyway, I thought it was cool. That's it. Enough said. All right.
If you want to protocol-less URL, you don't put the colon on. // Yeah, if you do a hyperlink like that, and it'll stick to which is very useful if you're serving your site under HTTP and HTTPS, for instance.
Okay.
Anyway.
Today I've learned something. All right, so let's take a look at our current development environment for this application then. So what we said, did we just make or just? Because I always change make. Okay. So what we said was we wanted this D shell environment to provide something that felt like I was developing locally, but with the parity of that container-based deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Now that means I'm inside a container right now. And what do we want to do? In fact, let's just split this first. So I can do a dcps to see what I have running when I do the make dshell command. So we do have a MariaDB database healthy. Good. We have an nginx serving static assets, and hopefully proxying any request for PHP back through to the FPM container. We have our FPM server running, and we have an interactive shell.
Yeah, which is the same image, right, as the FPM.
Exact same image with the same volume mounts, just working as is. So what we need now is confirmation that this application is working. So, and I'm now typing HTTPS, right, localhost 8080. Dun, dun, dun. Hey. All right. Okay. Not too bad.
We haven't actually logged in ever, have we? We're just trusting it works. The database is there. It looks like the assets are compiling correctly.
Yep. So hello there. Welcome to Ping Ciaran. We can artificially create 500s and 400s. We have the ability to browse organizations.
Oh.
Now, this is not the fastest application right now, and that is because I'm developing on a Mac. Now, there is a flag to speed that up. So maybe that should just be the first quality of life thing that we're going to do.
And there's a whole new mechanism in Docker for Mac that does some sort of syncing, but I've not tried it out.
Say what?
There's a new file system. Something RPC.
You got some link goodness there for me to check out? I guess I can just Google it. Docker for Mac.
If you're on the
RPC.
Sync RPC, yeah. Not that. It's in the new Edge thing. So what it does is instead of it in the container uses a user land fuse file system that has some RPC thing. So it's syncing the Mac file system events. It's then pushing them to Docker. It's not actually that much faster, allegedly. So the people I know have used it said it's about 10 or 20% faster.
Okay, I'm going to enable the delegated feature that I am somewhat familiar with.
Yeah,
and see if we get a little bit of improvement. Gee, I spent. Sorry.
Do a quick benchmark first before we change it.
Let me just get the documentation so we can share that too. So Docker for Mac delegated volume. There we go. Okay, so.
And people get very confused between delegated and cached.
Yeah, we'll try and cover that too then. So how do we benchmark this? What we want to do is time how long it takes for a curl request, I guess, to pull down that index page. So let's see, localhost 8080 time. Took 2.4 seconds, although that didn't give us a login page, so let's render that too. All right, it looks like we're around 2.8 seconds. It definitely felt longer than that here. Did it not?
Maybe there's some sort of cold start problem. I wonder if Laravel in dev mode caches things. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe that was just under 3 seconds. Right, okay. So let's see if I can get a little bit of performance out of that then. So if we find delegated, there we go. These are the three options that we have. These are, I believe, Mac-specific things that change the way the file synchronization. Well, they don't change the way it works. They change the expectations on requesting files from the container side.
Mm-hmm.
So by default, I believe we get consistent. That means whenever I modify a file on a host, and I then make a request against that container, it is going to wait until both of those file systems are in complete sync before responding to any of the requests coming in. This means that if I modify, what did we get on this page? See, I want to change dashboard. But that's not as easy as I'm hoping it is. Let's assume this is the template. Go away. Okay. If I save this, run my car, I hit log in. And I'm not logged in here. Going well. Okay, so. Oh, it didn't. I wonder if the default behavior is now changed, or have I just changed the wrong template? Anyway, let's talk about it first. Then we've got cached. Cached just means that we are going to trust the host container is always correct.
Yeah.
What that means is that we'll happily take a little bit of delay in a response. Delegated means just invert that. It means whatever's in the container, just use it. Now, from a performance point of view, just always using delegated means that when you're working with your application, you're always going to get fast responses. It may mean that you have to refresh the page to see that new change come in just after. So it depends on how quickly your workflow is between changing something on a template side and then moving over to your browser and refreshing that. So I feel from an experience point of view that going delegated is better, because I would prefer that the page responded faster, even if it is not entirely accurate for the changes I've made.
I agree with that. I think it's a no-brainer for stuff that the container's writing, right? So if you're mounting a logs folder or a cache folder out to your host, delegated is what you want, because there might be a slight delay in you looking at that file on the host, but you want the Docker file system to be able to write to that quickly without waiting for updates. It's less obvious, but I think it's the right behavior for the code you're mounting, because in your typical workflow, you're going to hit save, and then you're going to take a small amount of time to switch window, and most of the time the sync will have happened before you get there. It's really unlikely you're going to be able to run it in the few microseconds it takes. And this is a problem for PHP specifically, right, and other interpreted languages, in a way that it's not for Go, because if you're compiling, if you've got loads of source code and you're compiling it into a binary file, and the binary file is the thing that you're mounting into the container, that's one file to sync. Whereas a typical JavaScript, or not JavaScript, a typical sort of non-minified, non-compiled JavaScript library or PHP library, there's thousands of files, lots of dependencies that all have to be synced before it works.
Yeah, exactly. I want a lot of compared languages don't suffer this, because generally the compilation step is just explicit. People are familiar with it. They have to do it anyway. And if that compilation happens when a Docker image builds, then the tooling knows to do that and restart the container. For interpreted languages, yeah, this is where the pain points are, because we're working directly with the source code itself.
And it's the file count, isn't it? It's not the size of the files specifically.
Yeah, if you've got tens of thousands of small files, like vendor directories, then that becomes a challenge. What a lot of people do is move that vendor directory into the container using some sort of container-side volume. And these are all things that we'll try and cover over the next however many sessions we continue with this.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me, because I work on a Mac as well, and it's quite a slow Mac, I often don't, for instance, I might only mount the source folder, or I'll actively be mounting the thing I'm working on, but it involves a bit more sort of thinking about which files are on the host and which files are on the folder. But you can get, even without many tweaks, you can get quite decent performance just by not mounting much stuff. You don't need to mount vendors unless you're actively editing your composer config and trying things out. So, a question for you, David. Is there a way to say mount this folder except for these subfolders?
Oh, that's tricky. No. There isn't. No, I've tried that so many times, because it would be really nice to be able to say mount dot but not vendor. Unfortunately, that isn't a challenge. And then you run into this weird chicken and egg problem when you do want to move your composer Blender folder to be something that only exists in the container through a volume, where the local one over sits on the top of it anyway, is really frustrating. Actually, it's not a nice developer experience. It's not really a way to make it nicer. It's just, yeah, it's just painful.
So if you only want some folders mounted, you have to list them out in the Docker Compose explicitly. You need to list everything except Blender, as I said.
You would, yeah. I'm not familiar with a way of, yeah, I don't think there's another way of handling that.
Yeah, thinking about how Unix mount points work, there's probably not a nice way to do that.
So I made 2 changes to this view template. I'm not seeing it updated here. So this is not the developer experience I'm hoping for. And it seems to be...
So you're editing them on host?
Yeah. Oh, no, this is a view. This is asset compilation.
To build the pipeline.
Right, so we need to fix the build pipeline in order to get this experience that we need.
It's a good illustration of why people want it.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's jump down to our Docker Compose, because what we're saying now is that this needs to change. Okay. Now, that probably means
using a target of our own.
I'm trying to work out whether we still want to go through nginx and have that consume our volume from our node container that runs in a continuous loop, compiling the assets whenever things change. Like, it's really easy for us to... let's start naively, I think. Sorry.
I was assuming we would be doing this as part of Docker build, but no, we don't have to at all, do we? We just need something that's constantly doing the build into a volume. Right.
Yeah, I think so. We want to be able to. We want to allow them to change these files whenever they want, which means let's just fall back. Like, whenever I speak to people and they're trying to adopt containers, I say just try and use the same tooling. Try and have the same workflow that you have, but use containers so that you have that parity. And from my experience of working on the node ecosystem, is I would just run like an npm watch. I would watch my assets, do all the compilation, and we need to have that same workflow here. So what we'll do is we'll start very naively. We're going to provide a custom nginx that has node available. No? Oh, you're looking at me funny. Okay, then we won't start naively. We'll just go full hog.
When we end up with 2 of them anyway, one that's running this watch entry point and one that's running HTTP web server.
Right. Okay, let's add node. So
and we're already using the node image in the live, so it's sort of bringing us.
All right, so we're going to add node. We'll use the same image we were using in our Docker file, which is just node 10. Excellent. We're going to add a volume, and we want to mount. How was the directory structure here? Are we doing a dot?
We didn't bother working out which files were important last time. We went down that route of only mounting select things, and we couldn't work out which ones were important or not.
Well, like we said, we're going to do things slower this time. I'm a bit more explicit. So if we take a look at our package.json, we are using Webpack. It's got a watch, so this is what we want to use in development. It is we're npm run development. That is doing this. This is Laravel Mix, which is a wrapper around Webpack. Leo told us that last time on the chat. But there's no directories here. They may just be working against the same assets.
We found out last time that the Tailwind config.js was important. And
it was important.
There was another one. The package.json, obviously.
Yeah.
There was something else, I thought.
I think this resources thing. Oh, it's got PHP in it too. I think resources might be enough, plus the package JSON, plus the Tailwind, plus
let's try. We can find out then.
Okay, let's go back here. So we're going to do package.json, which we know we definitely need. Set a working dir of /code. We'll call it /node to remove any ambiguity between what we do with PHP. We also need the tailwind config.js, which we can just stick in there. We need webpack.mix.
Do you need that trailing slash on the node to stop it making a file? Just a question about mounts.
Yes. I'm hoping this is going to work. Yes, the slash should mean don't name the file node, and then the slash should mean put it in a directory. I could also just do package.json.
Yeah. You need package lock as well, I think, depending if they're using that.
I'm going to ignore that file forever. I don't think we should commit lock files.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have containers. We already have immutability. We have repeatability. We have all of this stuff. Like the log file, if you're deploying without containers, makes sense. But I'm not going to.
We talked about this last time, and it made perfect sense when we were talking about production. Does that still hold for development?
It didn't make sense for production. Having the log file in the container for auditability was fine, but not committing it to Git. The only reason I think we had to commit the log file last time was it required shrink wrap, which looked for the log file.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I'm a developer and I'm checking out a project, the earliest time I'm going to find out I've been working with the wrong set of dependencies will be when it runs through CI. If the developer has access to that log file, they get an earlier discovery of what versions they should be using.
I guess we're getting into this. So the log file is a guarantee that the dependencies that I have in a log file, that I have either run tests against it, confirmed that it works, and that's it. Now, if I remove that log file, what I'm saying is I trust whatever is in my package.json, and I have semantics there to indicate which major, minor, or patch version of the package I want. Which means I can always get security updates and the latest and greatest where needed for packages that I trust not to be breaking backwards compatibility regularly. Obviously, those things do happen, and we can pin those versions in the JSON file without the lock. I don't like committing the log file, because what I'm saying is whenever I rebuild this project, I never want to get security updates unless I manually do it. And I think that's a really big problem, especially with the amount of vulnerabilities. I don't think people that are ignorant to security really understand how many CVEs there are, and crypto miners end up in NPM projects fairly regularly.
Yeah.
So
I guess what I'm thinking about is that we talked about, in the deployment pipeline, we have this guarantee, don't we, that the exact image that the CI ran against is the one that's being deployed. So that's giving you some of that guarantee. Whereas here, maybe the developer isn't someone who runs the tests locally. We're rebuilding the image fairly regularly. We don't really know that we're about to start recompiling the assets on the fly every time we change a file. So we don't have that guarantee that the code I'm working on, the versions I'm using, have passed the tests. So I guess you do have the backup, of course, when the CI runs. But I'm thinking about, for some developers I know, that's 8 days later.
Yeah, so if you don't have a really tight integration and short feedback loop with a CI server that runs within minutes of pushing code somewhere, then yeah, you probably do want to commit a log file. If you work for a bank where you have to manually approve every patch update, you probably want to commit a log file. All other scenarios, I'd say embrace the ability to update and get security updates. A crypto miner may still end up in there because of that, but we have other ways to audit that code.
Right.
Anyway,
let's leave it there.
We've written 4 lines of code, so we'll keep making some progress here. Okay, resources, package.json, Tailwind, and Webpack. Let's see if we have enough to trigger and run those npm scripts. So I'll use my other terminal here. I'll do a docker compose run, interact. We don't need the IT when it's a run. We want to run node. Let's run the bash command. What did I get? Okay, so it is going to make me do this.
And that's because the folder doesn't exist, right? If it existed, everything would be happy.
Well, I set the directory to the working directory to /node, so that directory does exist.
Oh, does it get created?
Yeah, so we comment this out.
But is that created? What? Yeah, I don't know when that's created. Is that created at runtime, or is it created
when the working directory is set and the container metadata and the container is spun up? That directory will exist. And now I can drop back out, bring these back in, and we have what we want.
Okay, cool.
And that's a directory with all the stuff that we need. So I should, we pull up the package.json again. What we really want to be able to run here is npm run dev. We will need to do an npm install.
Wasn't it watch?
The dev runs a watch. So npm dev runs development. Development then runs. Oh no. Oh yeah. Okay, you're right. Development just does the Webpack stuff. Watch does the watch.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Thank you. So we are. What are we going to run in? Does watch do the install, or we're going to have to run install and then watch?
So yeah, we'll need to handle that. I'm not sure.
Installed though, that's good.
I think we have enough. Don't want to get too cocky, but I think it looks good. What's it doing now? Oh, building. All right, so let's assume this works, right? Oh, of course, right. We need the output public directory. Okay, so because the compiled assets are not something we need available locally, we're going to use a named volume. So what we'll do is node public. Sorry, an anonymous volume. We don't need it named. We're just saying just expose this directory as a volume.
Yeah.
Now, what may happen here is that it fails on the same step again because the CSS.js and other directories don't exist. I don't know if npm will attempt to create them. The other challenge we have now is I don't know if we need anything from this public. I think only the PHP file is needed by the PHP container.
Why don't we do it using the files on host? Why don't we mount the host? Bind mount it.
So I guess this is more a subjective thing from my point of view. Because it's compiled assets, like if I was working with C, if I was working with any other compiled language, those are things that I don't necessarily need on my host. There's something that I build, they help me allow, I can run my application, and when I kill the containers, I want them to disappear. I don't want them back on my host. And the other aspect would be just that if you want this to be ubiquitous across all operating systems, Docker for Mac does a really good job of mapping the ownership of the files. On Linux, those files will be owned by root, and you have to then jump through a whole bunch of other hoops to map them back to a non-root user on your local host, which means if I were locally, I'd try and run RM on that file, and it would say, hey, you need to sudo that. And that's always really frustrating from someone that uses Linux daily. The other aspect of it is, do I have another aspect of it?
Maybe if there's any front-end devs participating, they can comment, say, like, how often do you actually look at the compiled assets? Is it never?
I'm going to assume never. And also, I don't want people to have. I don't want it to be too easy for people to work locally and in a container at the same time. I want a workflow that allows people to ignore Docker altogether if they really want, work locally, or use a container-based workflow. If you end up in a mishmash of both, because I generate assets in a container and then try to do something with them locally, they're compared against something that, like, the targets are different, and I think that could be rather complicated.
Yeah, I don't have a big clear picture of whether that stuff's useful for debug, because I think the converse thing is, I see this in PHP world with things like var folders and compiled containers and things. People go looking for that stuff on their host, and then they're confused because it's not there. So I might go look in this public folder for the assets and have a little mental roadblock because there's an older version of the compiled assets in there from when I ran it on host, and I'm trying to set breakpoints. So I don't know how important that would be. Let's do it with the volume.
All right. So the first thing we're going to notice now is that my node modules is gone. So we're going to persist that across runs. That was a daft mistake of me. So what we're saying now is node modules, stick in a container side volume, public stick in a container side volume. We'll drop out of this, run it again. We'll have access to those two volumes.
I honestly thought volumes had to be named. I think I can take a few characters out of a lot of my files now.
No, they only have to be named if you need to be able to reference them through other tools. Now, that will be something that we do with the public directory. We are going to expose this to nginx, but right now it does not need to be named.
And an image can declare a volume as well in the build.
It can pass a hint to the container runtime that when you run this image, this should be exposed and consumable through other containers if you wish.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. There's some very weird semantics there, but yes. So what I'm going to do is just drop out of this and pop back in. What we should see is empty node modules. I wonder if it's not named, I'm not going to get persistence.
You just dropped out of the image, didn't you? The container.
Yeah, to show that it would still be there.
Oh, you're still logged into it.
Let's name it public. Or is it because I'm using Docker Compose? Ah, there we go. Yes, this is because I'm using a weird syntax. So I'm not going to be able to tell it to consume that same volume each time unless I name it. Okay. Yeah, that's just because of the way I'm running this container. Let's try that. Oh, I didn't declare it. Okay. So we need a node modules, and we can just use a tilde which says use the default configuration. Now, anytime I use the Docker Compose run, I should always use those named volumes, which have now been created here. And there's nothing special about them. While that runs, I won't be able to see it on a Mac, will I? Not in Linux. All it does is create a directory under var lib docker volumes, and that's where that files live. So there's nothing magic or sophisticated about that approach. And I should be able to drop out of this container, pop back in, run an ls on node modules, and we won't have to run that again now for as long as that named volume exists. If I were using Docker Compose up, I wouldn't need to name that volume. But
right.
Okay, so ls node modules, drop out, spin up, hope for the best, don't be wrong. Whew. Okay, so now I can run npmi. It should just be really fast. Well, as fast as npmi can be, but okay. Next step was we want to try We'll try running dev without watch first to see if it has a problem with that public directory and whether we actually need to create those subdirectories or not. But I'm assuming if they don't exist, I mean, maybe not creating the public directory, but I would hope that Node is happy to create the subsequent directories.
What other files were in there? Was it just robots text?
So this persistence here tells me that this is maybe a real file that should exist and is not ephemeral or generated.
Let's see.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, VS Code not very happy.
Is it big?
Let's take a look. Public CSS, app CSS, -h, 1.2 meg, 74,000 lines. Let's just close. Oh, I've actually closed my whole code. All right, okay, spin back up. I lost my directory now. Okay, code. Back into my D shell. So let's maybe just open that file in Vim then.
Well, it's so big, it must be compiled, right?
It's not compiled.
Wow.
This is. Oh, this is the Tailwind file.
No one's written that.
But it may just be pasted in the whole Tailwind configuration, which will then be purged in post CSS to be minimized later. So let's mount. See, now we're in this really weird territory where public is not an ephemeral directory and is it's not. Yeah. Damn.
So what are the options? We could build it into the image, assuming none of that stuff's actually going to get edited.
Let's mount it in first, and then
yeah.
Sorry, what I was going to say there is let's mount it in, run the development steps, see where that asset compilation. I mean, it must be in here, right? That's why these JS files are numbered. In fact, here's what we can do. Locally, let's do an npm. Must be like a cache clear, right?
You can see if they're in Git. Are they Git ignore?
Okay, ignore. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Up a bit.
Yeah, that CSS is there.
So they're the ephemeral ones.
So where is that app CSS being generated if it's not by the npm?
Did you run it locally in the past on host last time? Something like
that. Yes.
You can delete it if it's in git ignore.
But it's not mounted into the container.
I'm saying you may have just generated it on host when you were messing around with the code previously.
Yeah, okay. But how did we do that then? How can we generate that again?
Delete it or rename it and see if it comes back again when you run the command.
All right, so we want to go local. We want to delete public CSS, app CSS, and then we want to run npm run dev. And your hypothesis being we want to know if this creates it again.
Yeah. Could it be created by install? I don't know if npm drops stuff out of node modules.
It was generated right there.
So we can use the git ignore as a list of things that we want to have as volumes. It's effectively a list of the ephemeral folders, right?
Yes. So let me clarify what you're saying there. Is you believe the problem this is failing is because it's missing access to something, and if we tweak our, so that would mean there's something in the public directory that we're not mounting that is needed.
Yeah.
But if we look in this directory,
probably something Tailwind related.
I just don't see what it could be.
We could try running it with a mount of everything. Just mount dot, and then just to debug, check that works. And take things out rather than adding things in.
Excuse me. Okay, let's try it. So we're saying we want to mount everything to Node.
Mm-hmm.
Node modules go over the top. I'm hoping that works. It can be a bit weird trying to work out the order that's going to happen in. And then npm run dev.
And assuming that it didn't look like there were any specific files get ignored. We can check that. It looks like they have got a distinction between, ephemeral folders and non-ephemeral folders. So we could use that list in the git ignore as a list of things that we need to mount as volumes.
Okay, I think that's a solid idea. All right, so that worked. So we still want to be in a position where we don't have this. We want this. So what could be missing then?
Yeah, split open git ignore, see what's there. Because the problem we were having was it was mounting public.
I don't think it's public. I think we're missing something from the root now. Okay. I think. Okay, so we got Tailwind, we got Webpack.
We don't have package lock, do we? Can't be that.
It could be. Maybe we should rule it. Maybe we should rule that. Oh wait, do we need Bootstrap? No, wait, that's a PHP Bootstrap, so it's not like a JavaScript Bootstrap. App, nope, all very PHP centric. Opt is my stuff. Database not important now. Resource these. We mount all of that in anyway. Storage, PHP, test, blah. I mean, let's add the lock, and then I'm gonna. Let's rule it out, right?
Yep.
So, node package lock JSON. I want to stick it down next to this one. All right. So we drop out of this, we spin this back up. Thought it was the name. All right. So now we have our package lock. Should I blow away node modules to rule that out now that we're bringing in this lock file? We'll just trust npm to kind of fix that up just now. And if this works, then we're actually in a position where there is maybe a break by automatically pulling in the updates. But I am going to refuse to believe that is the case. So you look at all these vulnerabilities in this lock file version.
Yeah.
Right. This is the stuff you don't want. Okay, run dev. But of course, you also want your application to work for a while. So.
That reminds me, I did work in an environment where there was some sort of corporate vetting of which packages were allowed in. So they had to have the lock file in case one of their vendors went rogue and stuck in some malware. It's sort of tightly regulated. setup. Same error.
And that file actually does exist.
Scroll up to the error message. Did it have a leading /?
Let's run it again. should have catted that file. That 1.4 meg text file with 74,000 lines in it. Let's just drag this up to.
See, node resources CSS app CSS.
Right. Let's actually read the message. /public root file system public CSS app CSS, not /node/public. So that's our issue. Why? So one thing we're not mounting in is .env. Don't see anything particularly useful here.
So we think that somewhere there's a config that tells it what folder to use, but it must be relative because it's a project that one of the files we didn't mount tells it use the current folder for this install.
Indeed. So let's take a look. Let's try and understand this.
There's not going to be an explicit path anywhere because
so this is the post CSS runner here. Which is using Laravel mix. And we do have a Laravel mix. Do we have a Laravel mix config? Yeah, it was mix manifest. No, that's a compiled asset. Okay. Something in here is telling it where to find those files. So the works fine in a PHP environment. That's worth pointing out. Like if I come up here, no, that's my.
It worked fine when we mounted everything.
Yeah, when we mount everything, it's fine.
When we mounted everything into an npm container that doesn't have PHP, so there isn't a PHP file doing it. Is there anything it could be looking at that isn't right?
Yes.
So when we run it normally, it would look at like the current working directory, probably the pwd or the c. But that will all get set to the working folder.
Let's try append on a web.
Can you look at the mix configuration again?
Yeah, sure. Right. Okay. So this is.
I'm just looking at some of the docs. That .js method is a source and a destination, and that post CSS the right hand, the second parameters are destinations.
Yep.
Which look relative.
They do, which is why I'm assuming something in .env is telling it to use the current working directory, which is I was hoping would be append local. I mean,
is the current working directory not the work?
It is.
It is. If you echo cwd or whatever.
Yeah. PWD.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's going to be something so easy and simple. If you know. If you know.
There's a method set public path. But
Oops, don't need you. Proc file doesn't help. Package.json, there's nothing environment specific here.
Do we have the CSS directory? Is it created at the point we're running the command?
Yeah, we do have an app.css file in that directory when we run the develop command, yeah. I'm going to take a look at, so we can actually see the webpack config, and if we take a look at that, that should expose any environment variables that are needed.
We need someone who knows how to use mix on the chat, don't we?
Yeah, I was hoping for a magical comment from somebody, but not today. Right, so we've got Vim now. Let's take a look at this actual config. And right away, Mix is trying to load something from source index, but that's from its source, so we should be fine. It's got an init task, Webpack builder. That wasn't very useful. Oops. It just must be something.
Don't want the rest of the stream just to be us reading the mix documentation.
It is what it is. We said we were going to slow it down and we were going to do this properly, and that means trying to learn new APIs.
Yeah.
Right. Oh. Okay, so it's determine a path to the user's webpack mix.js. Looks for webpack.mix. We need to make sure that's on the right path. The root is then set to the root. Okay, this looks interesting.
So it either looks at, yeah, it looks at process.cwd.
Yeah, on one path. So how can we ensure it takes that path?
Put an egg world in it.
So we do have webpack.mix here, which kind of tells me that that should be. Set up. Config. All right, so node env. Okay, that just sets that if a flag exists. Public path is blank. Resource root slash.
Is that what we're looking for? Resource root?
We had two comments.
Ooh.
They're not applicable.
Are they this
rate. Okay, so I feel like this should work. I feel like we're mounting enough. I mean, I know we're not.
What was that resource root setting that you just looked at? That was set to /.
Yeah, so I think this is the default configuration. So if we come into source config, there is a resource root. I guess if we do a quick grep.
But maybe that's for external.
Then we see that it is we can overwrite it via the API. If we call set resource root. So it has to be a fail. It works when we change the mount to be a dot. That's
So
the bit that's really bugging me.
we're good developers, right? We can do some binary search. Can you?
I'm going to mount this file. Let's mount env first to really my thing, because it just feels instinctively like that is the file. I mean, I guess I don't need to mount it. We can use env file. No, because we had that syntax issue last time. Never mind. Okay, .env to /node.env. Let's drop out and see if that changes how this code runs. And it does not. Okay, so let's mount in. Let's just keep adding files.
We'll add half of them.
You want to binary search the files for the missing configuration.
Are we assuming it's a file that's in the root? Yeah. So just get the full list of all the files, paste it into your Vim, do a quick Vim magic, mount them all, and we'll find out if it's one of the ones that's in the root folder first, rather than something buried in one of those other folders.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Let's get the list of all the files and make a mount for all of them in whatever the quickest way is. Copy paste, do some Vim craziness.
Okay.
Not the ones that are folders. So grep out the ones that start with D.
Right, hold on. ls-l. Now, what we only want files. We don't want folders.
grep-v.
So we don't want anything that has -ev.
D.
How's it?
It's D at the start we don't want.
Yeah. So we're doing a regex grep where the line starts with a D, then awk print 1,
9.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
9.
7, 9. There we go.
And then sed. Or you can do it in your awk actually, can't you? Print.
We could do a begin statement. So begin.
No, you can just do print 9 space.
Oh yeah. I'm overcomplicating it now. So yeah, we could do dash and copy it. PB copy.
Some shell tips.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be amazing if it turned out to be the license?
I don't think that's going to happen. Alistair Steed says I have a typo in the .env match.
Oh, thanks, Alistair. Is there?
Of course it did. I mean, we haven't confirmed that that is the problem, but that's where my hunch is. So let's comment this out.
Yes.
Test my hunch.
He always adds a bit of value, Alistair.
I can't believe you're not even catching my typos.
Caught a few of them.
Oh, I did an I, not a dev. Celebrating too early. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. My hunch did not work, so we're going to bring in everything. We didn't actually list the dot files, but let's try anyway. We can always add the dot files.
Yeah.
No.
So it's something in the folder.
Either that or it could be one of the dots. There is an ESLint. Oh, I just lost access to my.
You need to plug it in more.
I do need to plug it in more. Let's check this ESLint. Yeah, I don't think that would be needed to run our dev step, but I will validate that. Okay, let's run our wacky thing again. This time at the LSE. Let's get all those files, including the dots. Oh, that doesn't work. Delete. Stick it back in.
It'd be good if any sort of junior developers are watching to see this is what you spend a lot of time doing in software.
Yep. 20 years I've been doing this and I still spend all my time debugging. In fact, I spend more time debugging now than I ever did, probably. And if this doesn't work, that means we're looking at something which is in a nested subdirectory somewhere. Really annoying. Okay. All right, let's try. You know what? Let's.
So try all the folders.
Yeah, try everything. So I'm just going to remove the grep here.
Well, no, just invert it. Because we want to. We know everything. If we mount everything, that it works.
Okay.
So see if it works with just take the V out. Oh.
Oh, yeah. Nope. Oh, that would still work, actually.
It would also catch any files with D in.
Yeah. All right. So we want directories only. Okay. Trackpad thing is going to get very annoying fast. Okay. Can't type. All right. And then we'll just start ruling out the things that we're pretty confident it is not. Although, how funny would it be if this fails?
I'll probably throw something out the window.
Yeah, it should work. I mean, if mountain dot worked, this should work. It failed. New hypothesis?
I'm working on it.
Did it work with a dot? Are we making
Hang
that
on.
up?
Hang on, David. Don't all those files need to have... Where are they going to be mounted? Those mounts?
Nowhere. I'm just creating a bunch of named volume.
Yeah. Yeah. So we haven't actually been checking the thing we thought.
No. Okay,
Let's go back to the theory. It's one of the files in the root for now.
I make myself laugh sometimes. Other times I make myself cry.
But we'll feel really good when we figure it out.
Okay. I'm sure there's a way to automate this, but right now it's not popping into my head.
You can automate it on the command line again. So delete it all.
Oh, yeah, I could do print. Yeah, okay. Good idea. So we want -- colon /node/print9. See, that's why you're here.
That's what a good Copilot does, isn't it? Shut up when you're doing it. Chip in with useful things. So that wasn't an error because Docker Compose was creating lots of volumes.
Okay. That's not quite right. I didn't add on. slash system. I can't remember how to do multiple cursors on a Mac. On Linux, I've got it down, but Mac, the key's different.
I don't know in VS Code.
Okay.
Right.
Hypothesis 1, validation 14. Duplicate
This
mount points.
is mounting everything explicitly, is it?
Yeah, so we can probably just remove.
And then we'll do a half. We'll do a couple.
That's the directories we've done. So let's get the files now.
Did it work?
Well, no, because I copied the directories. We wanted to do the files first.
What's that error message?
That was a duplicate mount because of stuff. So I'm just going to take out all of these mount points, except for the node modules. So we're going to mount in node modules and everything locally that is a file.
Just for my sanity, can you check node modules is in git ignore and there isn't some super significant?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. That would be crazy.
Okay, so now we are mounting every file in the root directory into the container very, very manually.
David, look in the chat. Has this person saved us? They're anonymous, but
so no. I would be very disappointed if Mixie's wrapper around Webpack required Artisan to exist, which means you're probably right.
Have a look at the Artisan file though. What's in it?
PHP.
Yeah. But maybe it uses the Artisan file, the presence of the Artisan file for some sort of directory relativeness to find the root. Do you know what I mean? I didn't write it. Let's.
Right, we know it doesn't have to run PHP because we mount in dot and it worked, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying I've seen projects that find the root folder by finding where the .git folder is. Things like that.
Okay, so we're going to comment out all of this. We are going to mount an Artisan.
And we do need all the other stuff. Yeah, the JS.
Let's try and go back to what we actually wanted though, right? Which was to mount in resources. And we made public a directory. And then the Webpack stuff. Okay, it was just wait, it's okay. So public we've done, resources. Yep. Okay, let's try this. And we're just about out of time as well, which is unfortunate. At least the show notes for this episode will be really easy. Like, watch Ciaran struggle. What did Ciaran and David struggle for 40 minutes? I can't believe that worked.
Yeah.
Why does that need to?
I guess you can't use mix outside of Laravel projects.
But
Can
it's
you
just
try it with an empty file called Artisan? Just for a laugh.
Oh yeah, because that's so fun. Right. All right. So let's make it fail first again, right? And then I'll touch Artisan and see if it passes, and then someone can go and open a very strongly worded issue against this repository. Sorry, a politely worded issue. Yeah. It's frustrating, but this stuff happens.
Yeah, you've got to see it from the point of view of someone who who's every project they ever have has an artisan file, and it's a great way of locating. Yeah, it's a nice idea.
Is it? An environment variable would have been just as good.
I've written code that looks for composer JSON. Let's just put it that way.
Unbelievable. No, thank you. No, if that was not for your comment, we would have spent at least the next 3 weeks.
So do we have enough time to add the watch container that we were trying to do?
So let's confirm that command works. It just should. It's no different from develop, except it runs watching the file. All right. So that means, well, we can delete all of that. I mean, I think that debugging process, as painful as that may be for some people to watch, there was some good nuggets of bash there for people to learn.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we want to automate that. So we're going to set our entry point to be npm. We'll set the command to be run watch. So that'll now run that on a loop. Anytime those assets change, we'll see that compilation step happen. We can now then expose this public directory to nginx. So instead of mounting in the local public, we are going to pull our volume from here.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's do just spin it all up. We can just
Did you actually make that change? I think.
Which
look at the YAML again? Yeah, you have. Sorry. Yeah.
I can run a docker compose ps. We're going to see nginx is running. Hopefully it's not been running long. It has our new changes. We've got our node watch running. Now let's confirm this will work. We should be able to reload this. And dashboard 2 is there. Now the final test is, if I change that to dashboard 3.
Can you tell the logs of the watch container?
Yeah, sure. Node. And we want to change that view template from earlier, which was here. And if I can find, oh, it's here.
It's time for dashboard 3.
Compilation step. Jump over here.
Oh
no, wait, it's in 2 places in that file, actually. Dashboard 3, there's another one here.
That's the title tag, I think.
That should run. Oh. Ah.
Is this browser cache issue? Do a force reload.
Right, let's confirm that watch is running. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let's check the nginx container. Is this nginx? No, that's PHP. DC exe nginx bash HTML public. Nope. Oh, where did we mount that to?
var www HTML.
Oh, right.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, wait. There's no view templates here. Ah, okay.
We don't expect the view templates to be there, do we?
No, we should change the CSS. How would a view? I wish I knew how view worked.
They'll be in this in the logs. It was generating in the tailed logs. It generated JS 13.js. It's all one line.
Yeah, So I mean, we should be able to see this fail if I search for dashboard 44, right? And we're hoping dashboard 4, 3, 2. So two, okay, so that's interesting. Okay, let's confirm. 13JS was edited at 12:17.
I have an observation, Dave. No, so the file you edited was in resources.
Correct. Yes? Yep.
And it's the same volume in both containers. So does it contain a 2 or a 3 when you look at that folder from the node running container?
Okay, so from a node point of view.
Yeah, so if you shell into the node one.
Resources, where was it?
Public. Node public.
Yes, cat 13. Correct. Dashboard 4. Nope, dashboard 2 is still there.
Is this us just not understanding Vue?
I mean, I definitely have never used Vue before in my entire life. So but we do see asset compilation. We do see JavaScript files being written. Let's change the CSS. Let's maybe you're right? Okay, so what about if we change one of these colors?
Mm-hmm. That'll be in the Tailwind thing, though, I think.
Yep,
so to change the colors, you would change the class name and the template.
Well, let's change indigo to be black. I'm assuming that indigo is the sidebar.
You're so rock and roll.
And let's now run again. Okay, that worked.
So it's just us not knowing how to edit the Vue thing.
All right, let's wrap this up and explain hopefully what the hell we did. So we have separated very painfully our node watcher out of our PHP serving image into its own container that runs in the background, continually watching the assets, recompiling the JavaScript and the CSS. Now, I think you're right that we don't understand the Vue component of this yet, which is why that dashboard change never made it on to the live reloady bit. But we were able to change the Tailwind configuration, and I'm assuming we could change other parts of that CSS and JavaScript over. So we do need to work out the Vue component next time. What else? What have I missed?
That's what we did. I mean, we haven't modified the production. We didn't modify any of the production deploy stuff because that already builds the same pipeline successfully.
Yeah, we just focused on trying to get a shorter feedback loop in a development environment. That means that on our next session, we can definitely tackle the Vue templating. We can work out how we trigger the rebuild, the redeploy, whatever has to happen there. I don't even know if Laravel delivers the Vue. I'll need to do a little bit of research on that. I'll spare people that on the stream. Then we will move back over to the PHP development environment and really clean up that workflow as well with regards to how we interact with Composer.
How do we run tests?
And yeah, we definitely will tackle the tests on the next session for sure.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, awesome. That was challenging, but really, I definitely learned a lot from just working with this tool. Again, Laravel is new to both of us, but I think we're making good progress. And hopefully people find this useful. So, thank you for tuning in. Ciaran, thank you for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure again.
Enjoyed it.
And I will see you all soon. Thanks. Adios.